The ZA Tech Show is made possible by Vodacom. Power to you at vodacom.co.za. And by Blackberry. Love doing business on your Blackberry smartphone at blackberry.co.za.
Welcome to episode 185 of the ZA Tech Show for Monday, November 14th, 2011. 2011's almost over. Kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to the December holidays. With me here tonight, I have Mr. Craig Wilson from Tech Central and Mr. Arthur Goldstuck from Worldwide Works. Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Brett.
Good evening, Brett.
How are you guys doing? Art2G on Twitter, indeed. Are you guys also looking forward to the end of the year, or not so much?
I'm pretty apathetic, I've got to tell you. Maybe that's because I'm only taking time off between Christmas and New Year, but yeah, it's all right. I'm looking forward to the start of a new year just because it's meant to be cleansing or something, you know.
Cleansing?
Yeah, this wasn't a great year. It was full of personal strife, so I'm looking forward to a sort of blank slate and a fresh start next year. So
I'm also taking a very, very short holiday, but it's mainly because I don't normally rest this time of year. I get a little break and then I get to go off to CES for a week of madness and mayhem and Las Vegas, which is a crazy, crazy place. Arthur, so the big thing that looks like a mic, I need you to speak into it so that we can hear you. No, you got to turn it in front of you. So hold on, let me help you out there.
Like this.
So let's try it.
Look like Mickey Mouse.
There we go. That is Mr. Arthur Goldstuck.
Who's desperate for the end of the year to take a break, but there's just so much happening that I can't actually envisage the end of the year yet.
Yeah, look, we've also got a ton on our plate at the moment. There's a ton of activity in the space. Not so much over the past week, I must be honest, from a newsy perspective. But lots of cool gadgets there's lots of cool gadgets and stuff like that's come out, but no big announcements and stuff like that. A lot of stuff became available in the past week, but no announcing the upcoming whatever. So yeah, interesting. But let's jump straight into it. And I attended my first interim results presentation last week. It was Vodacom's. I always thought these things were mainly financially focused and everything else, and it turns out they're semi-financially focused, but there's also some interesting stuff about the business and some of the products and that kind of stuff. We were actually talking about it before the show, Arthur, and you were saying, you were agreeing with me that data is the big news, really. And I think this is something we're going to see across most of the networks. But I was quite astounded to see how big a portion of the revenues and the business data has now become.
It's quite astonishing. It's the percentage of the business and it's the percentage growth that are both amazing numbers. I'm just looking for the exact figures right here. But
while I quickly adjust your microphone. But yeah, it was,
But the key figure that still sticks in my memory is the percentage of revenue made up by data, which is 14%.
Yeah.
That's massive. That's almost scary. When you consider that these are companies that are focused on voice and traditionally SMS.
Yeah.
But it bears out the research we did at the beginning of the year, where we looked at what percentage of people's spend is going to voice, SMS, and data.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you recall, but we had this one graph that I still refer to in my presentations as one of the most astonishing graphs we've seen in many years in terms of showing a shift in the market.
Yes.
It showed the percentage of the average person spend on their cell phone on SMS going down from 16% to 12%, which in percentage terms is small, but in proportionately it's massive.
Yes.
And data went up from 5% to 8%, which proportionately is even bigger.
That's huge. That's a close to what's like a 80% year-on-year increase, right?
It's in fact exactly 60%.
60. Well, yeah. Okay. So maybe a bit ambitious. Maths was not my strong suit at school.
I was going to say, I can weigh in here just from a personal perspective too. Just seeing how my usage has changed over the years. I've stayed a prepaid user for a very long time deliberately.
Yeah.
and I used to buy SMS bundles, but I found probably about 6 months ago that I wasn't going through them in a month anymore. At all, and they were expiring after a month. And so instead, now thanks to the likes of WhatsApp and so on, I spend the money I was spending on an SMS bundle on data bundles. And I find I have actually, my cell phone usage generally has declined enormously now that I'm doing more of it through data.
Also, as the networks get quicker, I mean, at least I'm seeing this. A lot of the time when I spend time overseas and I get a foreign SIM card, I'm using technologies like Skype and Viber and Haytel and all of these kind of VoIP type services a lot more, because the data speeds and the data quality on the networks have dramatically improved. So I would also venture that looking forward over the next couple of years, what we can expect is people are going to start switching a lot more of their traffic, their voice traffic, to data traffic. They're going to put that voice inside data packets. Now, Arthur, the question I had for you about this, though, is where is that data growth coming from in terms of the research you guys are doing? Are we seeing it really in those upper LSMs, the people that are generally more predisposed to using data, or are we starting to see quite a bit of bridging coming in from the lower LSMs, the traditionally more prepaid centered centric market? Are these is the mass market starting to use data in a meaningful way?
It's not yet the mass market, but it's heading for the mass market very fast. It's happening initially on the smartphone. That's where the major growth is happening, although on the data bundles as well. The data, the 3G modems and data cards, as we used to call them, are obviously a major driver of that, and that is growing rapidly. But it's on the smartphone where it's really happening. And as smartphones start penetrating lower down the SMNs, the LSMs, you're going to see more and more of that usage. It's already happening. What our research has shown is that Facebook and Twitter is starting to penetrate the mass market. And that clearly is data usage.
So what we saw in London, I mean, Craig, you can chime in here again, and this is interesting, is we keep on, as journalists, it's a point Simon made a couple of weeks ago when I was on the podcast with him. We just gotten back from Nokia World. My natural tendency as a gadget or consumer-centric journalist is to shoot after the impressive devices, the smartphones, the all-encompassing, wow, does cool stuff. But the real story that came out of Nokia World, for Simon at least, was the lower-end phones that they've launched that are S40 based and are bringing real data services to the masses. These are very inexpensive phones. They're running a legacy operating system, but one that's still got a fair amount of life in it. And by just exposing people to Facebook, Twitter, a decent web browser with some compression built in, we're going to see this massive upsurge. Well, at least that's the prediction of data usage in the lower end of the market. So that's quite interesting.
That's precisely why the market underestimates Nokia at their peril, because Nokia still has a dominant share of the lower LSMs. Now they're coming to that market with smartphones, or smartphones that are internet capable, and people have an aspiration towards those phones. People want those kind of phones. Nokia comes along. It's a trusted brand. It's the brand they know. People don't like to change brands, except for people on the high end and people who like to experiment with the latest technology.
Yes.
On the lower end, they will want a Nokia next, although they aspire to Blackberry across Africa.
Yes.
But when Nokia comes along with a device that gives them that kind of functionality, they're going to take that device, and you're going to see an explosion of Nokia usage across Africa in terms of data-capable phones, and that in turn will result in a further explosion of data. But just one other quick stat from the Vodacom results is that 38% increase in active data customers, the number of customers using data. Although I have to say that the definition of data includes SMS, but still the growth isn't coming from SMS usage.
No, we know that.
It's coming from real data usage.
And how much of that is SMS-like services? Because, I kept on thinking that, the majority of my friends are non-techie people. I sit in this very strange circle of friends that the people I know outside of work are non-techie. They buy phones that look nice, they buy phones that feel good in hand, and they buy what's familiar, like you were saying, so the Nokia or the Blackberry, and these people will stick with that brand because they're familiar with that. And these are people that have traditionally been very, very SMS centric. It's been interesting for me to see over the past 6 months how, as WhatsApp's become available on more platforms, how they've switched to that, and how they're getting people roped into WhatsApp, and even people with Blackberries, because of course it's really nice to be able to BBM with other people that have Blackberries, but that's not the reality for everybody. So WhatsApp's made made quite an interesting little appearance there. People are starting to also choose phones based on what features are available. Mm-hmm. So I've seen people switch to phones specifically because WhatsApp's available. But it's been interesting to see how the SMS centric friends I had have now switched, and it would be interesting to kind of look into how much of that is a contributor towards the data usage, because it's tiny packets, it's really, really small bits of information, right?
But we forget two things. One of them is Mixit. Mixit has 10.5 million active users in South Africa. That's the mass market. That's the market largely outside of the smartphone market. So the smartphone users are going for BBM and WhatsApp. In fact, Nokia are marketing their smartphones on the basis of having WhatsApp pre-installed.
Yes.
So I find it fascinating that
they're
trying to get the edge over BBM.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, if you look at it, while BBM has far richer functionality, hands down, there's a lot more you can do with BBM. I think the value proposition, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because the value proposition of being available on more platforms is pretty powerful, because it's going to allow people freedom of choice in terms of what handset and what platform they want to go with, but they still have access to that very, very key feature.
Sorry to keep you out of the conversation for one more moment, but I should just mention two other instant messaging services that are really making an impact, or are going to make an impact. The one is called 2Go.
All right.
It's a competitor to Mixit. Mixit are picking up around 40,000 new users a day, which is massive. But 2Go, under the radar, is picking up around 30,000 new users a day. So between the two of them, they're picking up around 70,000 new users a day. And those guys are going to abandon SMS as soon as they can get their friends and contacts over to the same platform. That's the one coming trend. At least the one set of data that one has to be very aware of. And the other is that Samsung, which is making a massive re-entry into the smartphone market since the launch of the Samsung S2, have launched their own instant messaging service called Chat On.
Yes,
and Chat On is going to be compatible with all the platforms.
The interesting part about that, though, it's been quite an interesting play from them. So if you've got a Samsung phone, it's free, all right? It's Java based, right? It runs on top of Java-based phones. It works nicely on Java-based phones. But other brand of Java-based phones, you've got to buy the application for it.
Interesting.
So it's quite interesting. They've obviously funded the developer, and said, okay, we'll fund the full development of it, but providing it is free for use on Samsung handsets, or free to buy at least, and then everyone else needs to pay for it. So that's been quite interesting to see. Speaking of Samsung, though, we were chatting about the Galaxy Note a little bit earlier, and I'm interested to get your guys' impression of it, because I'm still in two minds about it. I think it's a fantastic device. It's quick. It's got awesome functionality. The screen's really, really responsive. Can I tell you what kills it for me? Is the fact that it is a two-handed phone. I used it for about 2 days, and the first time I sent an SMS on it, really strangely enough, I sent an SMS only after 2 days of using it, and I tried to reach across the device with my thumb to get to the A's and the Q's and the Z's on the keyboard. No, I can't reach them, and I had to hold the phone with my left hand and then type with my right. I was done. For me, that's where the value proposition of the phone. So, I can totally acknowledge that people will find it ridiculously useful and business people will love it. But for me, that's the one thing that will not make it replace a standard smartphone for me, or standard form factor smartphone. Craig, your feeling?
That has pretty much been my impression. The first day or so of use, it was love, and it was deep, and it was passionate, and I thought this was the best phone I'd ever
you were blown away by
the
S2 and the Tab
Yeah, love the S2. In fact, a friend of mine just bought an S2 yesterday, which reminded me again why Apple are suing them, because she got a white one. And aside from a rectangular as opposed to a round home button, it's uncanny how much it resembles an iPhone.
Yeah,
but anyway, S2 aside, the Note, the first couple of days, loved it. I thought this is absolutely incredible. Yeah, the stylus I still think is a gimmick, because I think styluses are are just gimmicks. We've sort of progressed beyond that, and I think most people don't care. Certainly, some friends of mine who I've let play with it have loved the fact that you can annotate any page or that you can draw or take notes. But I think the stylus is gimmicky, but I loved the enormous screen, and frankly, I also loved the attention. There's nothing quite like taking a Samsung Note out at a dinner table and people go, "Good Lord, what is that?"
Yeah, for sure.
Is that a phone? Is that a tablet? What is it? I said,
"Is it a bird? Is it a plane?"
Exactly.
No,
it's a new Samsung Galaxy Note.
I took it out all week, people. Yeah,
I took it out at the Whiskey Festival, and even those people sozzled out of their minds.
Sozzled bankers, you mean?
Yeah, all the sozzled bankers realized that this was something special. They were saying, "What is that?"
Right?
I was going to say, I don't do that, you Brett. Only a letter away.
So, Arthur, your feelings on it? I mean, are you?
I think it's a beautiful device.
Should we smile with ours,
yeah,
Arthur?
Yeah.
And mine's at home.
Does it have a look at that beautiful screen? And does it have NFC?
No, you can use it as a club, though.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, you could beat a would-be attacker to death with it, possibly. But as long as you use the side.
No, as long as you don't use the back.
No.
The back is so flimsy, it's scary.
It's weird, hey?
Yeah.
And it's kind of unnerving taking it off and putting it back on again.
Yeah, you're convinced you're going to break it.
Yeah. You've got to pry it in from the side. Like it's very
They need to do something about that. The screen itself is beautiful.
Yeah.
And AMOLED.
But look, Samsung makes killer screens.
Their screens are definitely superior, and Apple should be ashamed of suing them until they can actually match the screen quality that they provide. But the real drawback, the real thing that will kill the Note in the market is the price. At around 8,500 rand. That's insane when the best tablets in the market are less than that.
See, and sorry, Craig, you want to jump in with something?
That's what I've had a couple of people say too, is that for that kind of money, you could virtually buy a cheap smartphone and a cheap tablet. I've had a lot of people moaning about exactly that. I think at the price point, I mean, the idea too, I suppose, is that it's for business users who'll pick it up on contracts and don't care what it costs. But for sort of mass adoption,
you've got to pay somewhere along the line. I mean, whether you're paying monthly. I mean,
that's true. The other people I heard was people saying, "What do you mean it costs more than an iPhone?"
Yeah,
which it may not for the new iPhones. In fairness, we've heard some crazy figures bandied about for what the 4S might actually cost. But I agree with Arthur. It is difficult at that kind of price point. It's very off-putting for a lot of people.
If price isn't a question for you, and someone else is paying your bills, or you have money you can just throw around, then it is a beautiful device to have. And for that very small category of consumer, I would say go for it, because it's a case of what's not to love, except for that back cover.
Sure. I think, the interesting thing we're going to see, over the next couple of years, and it's something that was raised when Nokia launched the N9, was the fact that now that tablets are available in the market, both from an Android and an iOS perspective, right, it actually, a lot of the functionality that people previously clung to their smartphone for, that is just so much better on that device, on a tablet, will open up new avenues for people to innovate on the smartphone front. And I think at the same time, the interesting thing is going to be, I think people will choose a Android handset and an iOS tablet, or vice versa. And I think at the same time, it's also going to open the market for people that really, really want a tablet, can go out and buy a tablet and buy a phone just for making phone calls and sending the odd SMS or whatever the case is. So it's it's going to be very, very interesting. People have said that the tablet space is not going to have any impact on smartphones and stuff like that, but I think it's totally, it has to. And it's going to shake stuff up. No, for sure, big time.
A lot of people think that it's not a revolution, but it's obviously a revolution. It's taking 25% of retail sales in most computer stores. That's a revolution for something that's less than 2 years old.
No, for sure. Where do you think the the tablet space goes. I mean, so there's one or two places here. You can see that there's more and more intelligence being built into tablets. The processors are just getting faster and faster and faster, more storage, etc. But at the same time, we're talking about a category of devices that have been invented to really start enabling and getting this cloud computing vibe kicking really, really hard. So your opinions on this, where do you see that going? Do you think we're looking at devices that are ultimately going to replace notebooks, or are we talking about devices that should be channeling their focus towards more battery life and relying more on the cloud?
I think tablets are great devices to use on airplanes.
Right. Okay.
When you have to pass the time and you've got to catch up with stuff. But in fact, even there, it's not a great device. A tablet is a very poor replacement for a notebook. I've used most of the main tablets on the market, and I've used Windows and Apple notebooks, and I've really used them thinking to myself, what is giving me the most utility and what's the drawback of each of these devices. And I'm finding that I can use a tablet to monitor my email and manage it at a fairly broad level. But the moment I need to really start working on my email, responding to requests, attaching documents, following links to websites, doing a bit of online research and getting back to people on that, the kind of stuff that we do as researchers and people sharing documents and all of that kind of thing, I can't do that on a tablet. A tablet is a toy when it comes to that kind of productivity. And right. CEOs typically don't have to do those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why CEOs love the tablet, and we refer to it as the CEO halo effect on tablets, because they want everyone else to love their tablets as well.
So I mean, it's one of those things where they kind of go, well, I can survive completely on a tablet. Give everyone tablets. Kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's also why, to the bane of IT departments who are suddenly being forced to support them, because if your secretary comes in and says, I want my tablet to work, you tell her, tough. But if your CEO comes in and says, I want my tablet to work, you make a plan. And that's also, I think, driving the there's a big move we're seeing from companies going, we'll show you how to seamlessly integrate your tablet with your existing enterprise back end. And I mean, that's being driven, again, by the high end because the CEOs want it to work.
Some companies can make that work. Kojima apparently is doing amazing things. Using Citrix for implementing an enterprise level kind of application layer. But that's an exception. And in most cases, you're going to find that companies are struggling to really make that work better than a notebook. Generally speaking, a notebook is going to beat a tablet hands down for productivity. It's only when you need portability and mobility that it comes into its own. If you've got people who are doing field work and don't actually have to write or manage or manipulate spreadsheets, then it's fine.
It's interesting. With the moment you have a tablet in your ecosystem with a notebook and a smartphone, well, at least this is me. I've stopped doing email on my tablet. I don't do mail on my tablet anymore. I tweet from my tablet. I browse the net from my tablet, and I watch an alarming amount of video from my tablet. But the point behind that is I travel a lot, so it's a perfect device for doing those three things with. All right. When it comes to email, I'm cutting through the craft using my smartphone, but I'm not doing meaningful email on my smartphone. I'm just getting rid of the spam.
Precisely.
And I'm forwarding stuff onto people. And the moment I need to sit down and actually compose a well thought out mail or whatever the case is, then I'm using my notebook. And it's strange because I've been using a tablet pretty much since the iPad came out. And it's amazing to see how my entire work mode has shifted between one place and another place, but it's been this is how it's been for the longest time now. Or, let me put it this way. The way my work mode is now is the longest I've had this work mode, if that makes any sense. I've like 3-4 months ago, I stopped doing mail on my iPad. And it's strange. Every now and then I feel kind of guilty and I just update my mail on it because I don't have it like preemptively pushed down because of the battery life, right? So, I'll kind of log in just to double check and like cache all my mail in case one day I need it. But it's strange. Everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's funny how there's so many different uses. I mean, when I think about it, I have watched maybe half a dozen videos on my iPad in the time I've had it. I don't really watch video content on it.
Okay.
One of the things I use it for a lot is I use it as a remote. to control my iTunes
awesome.
and so on.
Oh,
I'm lucky
yeah,
I put it
yeah,
next to,
yeah,
I've got a little
yeah,
table.
yeah.
I put it on a coffee table next to the bath so that I can change tracks because I like to play everything on random. But like many people, I've got about 70 days of music. So I like to play on random, but every now and then you get something that you go, how on earth did that get there? So I use it as a jumbo remote. I use it for email a lot. I don't use my phone for email at all, really. I use my tablet to, in the mornings especially, cleave through all of the mail that doesn't require a response.
Yes.
Or all of the mail that requires two lines.
Pretty much every press release that lands, I file.
And for those, it's great because
Yeah,
people are
exactly.
still insisting on doing press releases as attached PDFs as opposed to plain text. And the iPad handles that with aplomb. It just opens the PDF, there you go. I use it for mail a lot, and I actually find that I use it for work quite a lot.
A little confession, I rarely get past the headline. If the headline hasn't grabbed me, well, look, reading the headline, I know whether it's going to be relevant to me or not.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm going to either like file it away in the place where press releases go to die, or this folder where it's like press releases to go back to in the next day or two in case I need some news. So,
I consume that sort of stuff a lot, and I use it for work a lot too. Actually, I actually type on my iPad more than I'd like to, because I find depending on where we go, especially if it's say a tour of a data center or something, it's not practical to carry around a laptop, but I can totally do the vulture and pick away one-handed on an iPad. So
that's where the note comes into its own. I have to say, a big thank for the note.
Yeah, it is funny how the uses vary from person to person. People are finding a lot of uses for tablets. My other favorite thing that I use it for, also just to burn through the data on it, because I've got one of those 8 or 10 gig SIMs in the side, is I've got a backup service that I back up my music to, and so I use it to stream music to it. And coming back to your connection talk earlier, I've been using it for Skype sometimes as well. I had a very good chat with the other ZA Tech Show host, Simon.
Yeah.
We managed to record an interview over Skype using ATA's 3G, and it was crystal clear. So, I think that sort of thing is becoming an option too. And as the data becomes cheaper, I know a lot of people who bought iPads without 3G, pretty much all of whom have come to regret it. And I think as the data becomes cheaper, all of those sorts of things are going to push it as well. I find I could do without a smartphone a lot in the face of having a tablet with me all the time.
I don't know. I'm very, very attached.
So I probably need a smarter phone too, though.
It could possibly be that. We'll not get into that and ask you what phone you're using.
The strangest thing for me has been that I have an iPhone that I've been using for apps. In lieu of a tablet. Before the tablets came along, I was using the iPhone only for the apps. I use a Blackberry for phone messaging and email while on the move. But on the apps level, I've found that suddenly I'm no longer using it because the iPad is just so much more effective for using those very same apps.
Providing there's high HD apps available. One of the most frustrating things is sometimes it's like XBMC, all right. I'm a big fan of the Xbox Media Center project and that kind of stuff, and that and Boxy doesn't have a high def app for
There's a workaround.
iPad. No, you kind of have to like have this giant pixelated piece of goo on your machine.
There's an app for that, right?
Okay.
As they say.
All right.
It's a thing called Retina Pad that will upscale everything very nicely for you. But there is a caveat.
You got a jailbreak.
You can't be playing by the rules if you want to. Want it.
Hey, you know what? I've toyed with the idea of jailbreaking.
Rules. We don't need no stinking rules.
Agreed.
If there were 3 applications that I absolutely had to have, and the only way I could get them was to jailbreak, I'd totally do it. But I've only ever encountered 1, maybe 2 applications.
Now I've given
There's
you
never
another.
3 anyway, so
Retina Pad's very good at upscale, especially where there's text. So all of your text and things on iPhone apps, when you upscale them, look crisp and beautiful. It makes the FNB app and even WhatsApp look great.
Blows my mind that they haven't yet developed, or they haven't allowed that to be in the App Store. I mean, that's a killer app.
Yep, it's a great app.
It's crazy. Anyway, it'll be quite interesting to look into why Apple hasn't decided to let that be in the App Store.
But I suppose we should stop talking about tablets.
Let's quickly just have a little word from our sponsors. So the first sponsor I'd like to speak about tonight is Vodacom, and specifically what I want to speak about from Vodacom is the Office in the Cloud service. It's something we've spoken about briefly before, but I've got a little bit more detail on it now, and I think it's a good time for us to chat about that. So essentially the Vodacom Office in the Cloud service is the first of its kind in South Africa. Essentially, it it revolves around the ability to rent a full-blown PC type functionality through a thin client. There's a printer. There is a voice phone, a Cisco voice phone that you make use of, and a flat panel screen. $600 a month. You get to choose between Windows XP or Windows 7 in terms of the operating system. It comes with Office. The nice thing for SMBs is that is what you pay per user per month, and you scale up from there. A couple of things that I really, really like about it is it also includes help desk support, monitoring, reporting. These are things that you generally have to have a techie on hand. And in a company like ours, 7 people, we don't generally have that kind of budget available. So you can pay as you grow, as you add employees to it. And I do really like the ability for you to add features and services through a portal, as opposed to having to go through a very, very convoluted process of phoning a call center and stuff like that. There's a portal where you can look at the monitoring and reporting, but at the same time buy new services into it. And like I said, the base price, 600 Rand per user per month, includes a thin client, flat panel, keyboard, mouse, Cisco voice over IP phone, and a choice of 2 HP printers. So that's a pretty rad solution, and I think it's definitely worth having a look into. It's a Vodacom Office in the Cloud service. Check it out. And, of course, we're very thankful to Vodacom for sponsoring our humble little podcast and allowing us to do this week after week. It's a ton of fun, and we really enjoy it. So, on that note, let's talk about a couple of interesting bits bits of South African news. And, Arthur, you're quite excited about the fact that the Amazon Kindle, or the Kindles, there's 2 of them, available at Incredible Connection. The one is the Kindle that's been available for quite a while. Kindle Keyboard 3G. And I think that's coming in at what, 2,400?
2,499, so 2,500.
2,500.
Yeah.
And then the new baby Kindle Sans keyboard and just Wi-Fi. I think it's just actually been branded the Kindle, because this has now been rebranded as the Kindle Keyboard 3G, and that's coming in at 1.5.
Correct. Which
So
sounds expensive compared to the cost directly via Amazon, because people always say, but I can get it from Amazon for...
I was about to ask.
Well, it takes a couple of weeks, though. It takes a couple of weeks to have it shipped from Amazon, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a number of reasons. One obvious reason is the cost of shipping.
Yeah.
Another obvious reason is that they have to support it locally.
Okay, so that's an interesting one, because I've remained a little bit quiet on this for obvious reasons. But if they're locally supporting it, that changes a lot. All right, if it means that there's local warranty and repair and stuff like that, that changes the deal quite a bit. Because with the previous Amazon model, you have to stick it back in a bag and ship it to Amazon overseas, so it takes another 3 weeks to get there, then a couple of weeks for them to fix it or replace it, and then it comes back, right?
Correct. So this really cuts a lot of the pain out of owning a device. That's the one thing. The other thing is that it supports local 3G. So obviously there's a cost involved in that, and obviously there's an implementation cost as well. So people have to accept the convenience of buying something locally and having it supported locally.
I was under the impression, though, that WhisperSync worked in every country in the world, regardless.
So am I, and I say this too because a friend of mine has a Kindle that he picked up in the States.
Yes.
And the Whisper works on it fine here.
To my understanding, it does. I don't know whether the experimental browser works in South Africa, or if you have a South African account for that matter. But I know that the WhisperSync does work in terms of the book delivery and everything else. I think it's an alliance with AT&T in the US, and then there's a roaming agreement for the rest of the world. But either way,
but the local support, and I suppose the warranty and them getting it back, they're probably shifting it back and bringing it in. I mean, generally, when it comes to electronics, I suppose a good rule of thumb is if it's however many dollars work on $10 or $11 rands to the dollar, and you'll get a more accurate assessment of what it's actually going to cost in South Africa.
But there's one other factor which handle with care. Don't delete my new Terry Pratchett. The beauty of that,
obviously reading the Steve Jobs book on mine, and it's fantastic.
You have the Samuel L. Jackson that I can't tell you the title of because it's not radio friendly.
The beauty of the Kindle for me was that the day the new Terry Pratchett snuff came out in the United States, it was available in South Africa.
Yes.
On the Kindle.
I had exactly the same experience with the Steve Jobs book. In fact, 2 days before the Steve Jobs book shipped internationally, I bought it, and I think I saved $3 or $4 by doing that.
Yeah, and aside from that, the fact is that if you bought the hardcover in South Africa, let's use snuff as the example,
Yes.
because that's a classic South African example of if you follow a particular author. So
Yes.
that's the new Terry Pratchett. Typically what happens with the new Terry Pratchett, it comes out in the UK first, it appears simultaneously in the United States in hardcover,
Yes.
and then 6 to 12 weeks later it'll arrive in South Africa in hardcover.
Yeah.
Then you wait another 6 months before it appears in paperback. And again, it's 6 to 12 weeks, even more, after it's appeared in paperback in the UK. There's this massive wait for it to become affordable
Yes.
in this environment.
Sure.
With a Kindle, it's instant, it's simultaneous with the rest of the world. So it changes the ability of the reader and the fan of a particular author to keep in touch with what they're producing and consume it as they're producing it or as it hits the shelves. So that's a massive value proposition.
If you read new material, it makes a ton of sense, and you'll very, very quickly absorb the 2,500 Rand you've paid for the Kindle.
Exactly.
From the perspective that I actually wrote a review on the Kindle 3G keyboard for Connect today, and I did a little price comparison, because of course people are going to go, but it's cheaper just.
You can read a book on it quickly.
It's cheaper just buying the book. Why don't you just buy the book? And I said, hang on, let me actually do an analysis of it. So the Steve Jobs book that I bought on pre-order. So because I bought it on pre-order, I saved a couple of dollars. But even if you went in now and bought it, $15 US. So at about $8 to the dollar, that's still a decent kind of exchange rate, all right? And like I said, my maths, $120, all right? Right now you can go to Exclusive Books and buy the hardcover version of the same book for $250. So there we go, $130 in the mix there, all right? Add that up over the next couple of books you're going to buy. So take the $2,500, divide it by 130. You need to buy 20 books, and you've paid for the device. And then you're actually starting to actually save cash. Plus the convenience of having the Kindle with you. I read more than one book at a time, and depending on my mood,
Likewise.
right? So, so the fact that I can have that rocking around my bag is cool. I purposefully arrive about 15 to 20 minutes early to collect my kids from school at the moment, because
now we know why you're
there's
so
a stunning little park bench right outside, where the junior school is, like a little tree. I can sit under the tree and get through 20 minutes of reading. It's a nice little break during the day, and I would honestly never be able to do that if I had to lug 3 books around with me everywhere, right? Because I never know when I'm going to feel like reading when I arrive. So that's where the Kindle makes a ton of sense.
And one more thing.
Yes.
If you want to buy a Kindle for somebody, or you want one for yourself badly, and you walk into Incredible Connection and you see it there, you're going to buy it. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Or it's a case of, if you're ready for that instant purchase, or that unintended purchase, you're simply ready for it, and you see it there, you're going to buy it.
Yeah,
whereas you're not going to go to the Amazon.com site and make that unintended purchase,
and then wait a couple of weeks for it to arrive. Yeah, for sure. Unless you're buying your second or third Kindle, maybe, I don't know.
If you're a geek, and
then your chances are you've already got a Kindle, right?
You probably already have one.
Except let's say you want one.
If you're a geek like him,
yes,
and you feel adamant that you're not going to pay South African prices for something you can get somewhere else at 2/3 of the price simply by clicking a few mouse buttons, then you're going to go to Amazon.com. But the average consumer out there doesn't think that way. Yes, a lot of them want to save the money. A lot of them will wait. But for most people, they want that instant gratification.
Sure.
Or else it's that unintended purchase as they see the device there and they say, wow, it's a Kindle. I'm getting it.
Okay, let me have the final word on the Kindle, and then we've got to stop bowing down and worshipping this device. The final word on the Kindle, the thing that I really, really like about it too, is it's really nice to explore new authors. The fact that you can download a sample of pretty much every book, just before you fork over the cash, for me makes great sense. And now, if you've got a Prime subscription, you can also lend books, which is interesting. You can do this book swapping thing, which is kind of cool. It's limited to certain titles.
It's going to change book clubs.
No, for sure.
And it's already changing the way a lot of people publish and write. I mean, a lot of people who are self-publishing, in a sense, self-publishing used to be a dirty word. And you used to think of these terribly bound, shoddily printed manuscripts.
Sure.
And, now, thanks to digital and ebooks, that's not the case. And a lot of authors I've spoken to have said that they are personally making more money thanks to ebooks, because also if you sell a book for 99 cents, say 99 US cents, said people buy it on impulse and may never read it. But that doesn't matter. You've still made your money, and you still sell an awful lot more books. And they said, people don't generally go into an exclusive books and make an impulse book purchase. At least not most people I know, because of the cost of books. But, with ebooks and the ability to sell them for less, a lot of people are actually seeing far higher volumes on the back of it.
Sure. Okay, let me quickly jump in with another word from a second sponsor. Our second sponsor, of course.
Should be Amazon, but it's not.
No, it's not. It's Blackberry, RIM. And of course, there was a very, very interesting announcement from RIM this morning, in fact, which is kind of, you've heard it here first, people, but RIM today announced that Blackberry smartphones running on OS 7 have been independently evaluated by a third-party common criteria evaluation facility to meet the security criteria for evaluation assurance level EAL 4+. So essentially, the common criteria is an international standard for validating that products meet specific security requirements. Widely respected for its extensive and comprehensive evaluation by an independent third party, EAL 4+ accreditation examines a product's design, software development methodology, and security mechanisms. It's the highest level of accreditation under the Common Criteria Recognition Arrangement by 26 countries. So essentially, the phones that have been given this level of accreditation are the Bold 9900, the Torch 9810, the Torch 9860, Curve 9360, all phones based on Blackberry OS 7. So this is the one thing that few vendors actually, and it's probably an interesting topic for us just to discuss briefly, are quite as focused on, is security and security accreditation. In fact, the only vendor I've seen mention anything about it recently is Motorola. But this is something that BlackBerry hammers away at really, really strongly. And Arthur, maybe this is something that you can shed a bit of light on. Do you think it's mainly because of them still having such a stronghold in the enterprise and the government and the public sector space, or is it just something that you think is going to become more important even to consumers as the next couple of years unfold?
Well, one of BlackBerry's key competitive advantages is that integration with enterprise security.
Yes.
And it needs to hold on to that advantage for dear life, because it's given away so many other advantages. Yes. BBM remains an advantage, regardless of what the Apple guys are saying about the iPhone 4S. It still doesn't match up to the BBM experience. But that's more in the consumer environment. In the United States, they've lost the consumer hearts and minds.
Yes, that's actually true.
So they really have to make sure they hold on to the enterprise heart and mind. And security and the level of security and the level of assurance that they can give the enterprise is part of the key to that. And that's partly what also is going to maintain their market share throughout the world in the enterprise market, because the IT decision maker in a company loves that as much as they might love the iPad as a device. In terms of their job, they love the BlackBerry ecosystem. And the most fascinating stat to me is that BlackBerry still maintains the highest market share in the enterprise market in the United States in terms of smartphones.
Yep.
Which always shocks the iPhone guys especially, but also the Android guys.
Also,
because the Android guys imagine that they've killed BlackBerry. They haven't, certainly not in the enterprise market.
But the interesting thing about that, though, is the fact that Blackberries are expensive in the States. This is what a lot of people don't get. They're unbelievably cheap devices to have here. But the Blackberry service comparatively around the world costs a great deal more than what it does in South Africa. And that's pretty important considering the fact that they're still managing to maintain that market share. Anyway, so there you go. BlackBerry still focused on security, and I think it's a smart move. I mean, to keep that foothold in the enterprise and the government space is going to be a really, really big deal, at least for the next couple of years for that company, right?
Yeah, there's a very popular phrase in the enterprise world, which is the consumerization of IT.
Yes. And
what they're talking about really is consumer devices becoming enterprise devices or intruding into the enterprise space. And it's led by the iPad and the rest of the tablets. And to many IT decision makers, it's very threatening. They don't like consumerization of IT. And BlackBerry is sort of the bulwark against that consumerization of IT. But at the same time, because so many consumers are using it, it also is now part of that onslaught against the firewall.
Well, look, I think at the same time they're also kind of driving that just a little bit as well with their low-end devices and that kind of stuff. BlackBerry is driving that consumerization of IT, at least in South Africa. It's something that we're seeing companies shutting down Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn access on their network. And I'm the first guy to put my hand up and say, so I'd like to introduce you to your worst enemy. This device costs $45 a month. It's called a BlackBerry, and it means you're screwed. Because your people are still wasting time on the net.
I'm glad you brought that topic up, because it's not just the BlackBerry. The person with a smartphone in their pocket has got their social networks in their pocket.
Yes.
So if you're banning social networks for productivity reasons, you lost.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm sorry, bandwidth prices have come down so dramatically over the past couple of years. You can't even argue anymore that Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn are chewing my bandwidth. It's a lie. It's a lie.
So I agree, 100%.
So let's get on to the fact that I'm pretty sure it was, but I didn't write anything about it and I didn't read anything about it. But I saw a lot of activity on Twitter about it. But apparently, it was the birthday of the internet in South Africa in this past week.
Wait, so we've got to qualify this, though.
The first ping packets were sent from South Africa to a university in the US, and some packets came back, and the internet arrived in South Africa officially when that took place. And that's kind of cool to know. What, it was like 20 years, a 20-year anniversary?
It was the 20-year anniversary on Saturday.
Anniversary on
at
Saturday.
10:44 a.m. if you want to be painfully precise.
That's I think that's really, really cool. I remember the early days of the net, man, and hacking around and like telnetting into boxes, and I mean I still do that on a daily basis, but telnetting into stuff and to like look at the files, because FTP was really, really slow, and then once you found what you wanted to like download, you then FTP into that box and grab some stuff down. And I was pretty elite with a shell, let me tell you, with the Linux shell. I knew my way around that. And using so the first email I ever sent was using an application called Pine. All right, and Pine was a terminal-based email client. Now, do you know what Pine stands for? Anyone? The people in the chat room are going to know.
In something.
No, it's an infinite recursive. Pine is not Elm, right? Like GNU. GNU's not Unix, all right? Which is fantastic. So what does GNU stand for? GNU's not Unix. See, I absolutely love that kind of stuff. But Pine was the first email clients I used, and it was nasty, man. It was really, really nasty.
Yeah, I see the chat room likes that. Yeah.
So yeah, these are the early days of the net.
Then you must have enjoyed using Slip and Trumpet WinSock and all of that kind of stuff, just to get your browser running. I mean, it was absurd. You needed 4 programs just to visit a website.
Yeah, for sure. But it was all because there was like Proxied and stuff like that, and the early days of dial-up modems and stuff like that. It's crazy.
But I think we should pay tribute to one of the guys who was largely responsible for that birth of the internet in South Africa, Mike Lowry.
Yes.
Because he was the guy who sent that first IP packet 20 years ago. But I don't like to think of 1991 as the birth of the internet in South Africa, because to me it really goes back to 1987, when Mike Lowry and a group of comrades at Rhodes University, in fact, established the first data connection to a network in the United States. No, ARPA was what that was the American. That was
but I seem to recall that they hooked into that or something like that. But they did connect to a university, but it was a direct link.
They called
it
Uninet. It was a direct. It was a telephone link. I think they used acoustic couplers.
Oh my word! I would seriously kill for a set of acoustic couplers. You have no idea, like war games. Remember, you clipped them onto the phone.
You don't want to use acoustic couplers. It was seriously ugly and dirty. But that's how Mike and Co made the first connection to the internet, and that was at least to the global, I suppose, what was then called the ARPANET, and they called their network Uninet, and it remained Uninet for many years, way beyond the arrival of the browser and
gigantic intercontinental phone call, though, I mean, is what we're really talking about. Yes,
that's how it started. And it was all illegal.
Yeah.
So technically they were enemies of the state for starting up the internet in South Africa, which is quite the opposite of how it started in the United States as a project of the
government,
Department of Defense.
Yeah. Interesting. And now we're dealing with ridiculous amounts of bandwidth and absolutely loving our lives at the moment. Well, I don't know, some of us. It was very, very sad. I think that the LTE tower in my area went down sometime over the weekend.
And in my area. Maybe we're in the same area.
Okay, so Highlands North, Norwood area.
Now, it seems to me like the LTE network went down completely, because everyone I know who's on LTE has found it stopped working over the weekend.
Okay.
Victory Park as well.
I know that it's still working at Melrose Arch. I was speaking to Hilton Tarrant this morning. He was boasting about how there's a new LTE tower right at Melrose Arch.
I have to tell you that the Melrose Arch LTE connection is the fastest connection I've ever had to the internet from anywhere in the world.
What speed did you get?
40 megs per second down.
Great. I'm going
to
live at Tasha's.
Gonna say, I'd live in Melrose. Guess what I'm going home to do? Because my LTE modem hasn't worked at home at all, and it doesn't work at my office because neither are covered. And I've been told that Melrose would be getting better coverage soon.
I think we should make it clear to...
I'm going to be checking and seeing if that's the case.
We should make it clear to viewers or listeners that these are all part of the pilot program. You can't go out and buy an LTE modem.
Damn. And if you could, it would totally be worth like both of your kidneys. Literally, it's and I would go on dialysis to make use of that.
No, I would just give up all my old smartphones and tablets for LTE.
It's become my default way to actually connect to the internet at the moment. So the household still connects through DSL, but for me, it's like,
hey, are you living in my house or something? That's exactly what's happening in my house.
I wish. In mine, meanwhile, we go, one day they'll build us a tower.
Yes.
One day.
The birth of the internet will maybe one day.
You know what it is, too, about these high-speed connections that we forget, or we don't forget, but I'm reminded of occasionally when I visit other people elsewhere. It's just how much quicker it makes everything seem. How much quicker it makes a not necessarily particularly fast computer seem. Just because all of those extra seconds of, clicking a page to load and waiting 3 seconds, or not having to wait 3 seconds, cumulatively over a day. If you work in a job like ours where you're constantly loading web pages, all of those little seconds make such an enormous difference. It really makes it seem like an elderly desktop is just performing so much better only because you don't have that lag. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've really seen it in a big way is when we've got to send reports to people. A new social media report, for example, in its normal resolution is a 16 meg file.
Okay.
In a low res version, it's a 6 meg file. So we're having to upload. Download is always faster than upload.
Yes.
But we're having to upload these 6 or 15 meg files. Yeah, we can zip them. It reduces by 1 or 2 megs.
But
in the past, it would be a case of, okay, let's click the attach file and send, and then go away and make coffee. Now it's a case of click attach file or send.
Go to bed.
And you watch that bar move from one end to the other in a few seconds. It's almost supernatural.
It's faster than ADSL and faster than 3G. But can I tell you what? It's interesting for me. The downlink speed is still like alarmingly bigger alarmingly faster than what the upload speed is, to the point where 3G and HSUPA and HSDPA has kind of gotten to the point where there's a decent ratio between upload and download. If you consider the maximum you can get download on HSDPA and the maximum you can get on HSUPA, in terms of app, but it's just it shows you LTE is a technology that even though that upload speed is really quick, has clearly been designed for download. It's clear to me you're not getting anywhere near the 40 meg you were talking about in terms of the Melrose Arch.
I was getting 40
download.
and 28.
28 up.
Pretty good
Wow.
for app.
Okay, the fastest I've actually seen, and I've tested all over town. So let me just quickly get.
Yeah, I didn't get 28. Even when we were testing it, and I was testing it in Santon, the best I saw up was 8, I think.
Literally the first thing I do is check. So, if I arrive somewhere I haven't been yet, the fastest I've had on upload, Arthur, is 7 megabits per second. That's the fastest I've had upload. The fastest download speed is actually from these studios. 30 megabits is the fastest I've had. 31.
Now, if a Mac had a decent file management system, I'd be able to find my actual tests.
It's called Spotlight.
Yes,
trust me,
that's what he's looking at.
Apple space and type your stuff in.
Okay,
be
here we
amazed
go.
at the
My
awesome.
first test was 15 down and 11 up. That was around 2 months ago.
All right.
My first test at Melrose Arch was the same. I subsequently got in the Victory Park area 29 down and 15 up. And I don't care that the down is twice as fast as the up. I love the down and the up.
And twice as fast would be an improvement on what I get on my home
I've
line
had,
now.
I mean, the maximum I've had is about a quarter. So I mean, the up being a quarter of the down. But either way, gentlemen, it is time for picks of the week, and I have an interesting one. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited about my one. But I'm going to go last. Who would like to start?
All right.
Okay, Mr. Wilson. Let us hear about your pick of the week, sir.
My pick of the week is an iOS app.
Uh-huh.
It's an iPad app. And
Do you have to jailbreak your iPad in order to use it?
You do not. This one is
Excellent.
open to all.
So it's a PG.
It is, yes. I've been
It's
talking
an all ages.
It's
It's an
it
all
up
ages pick of the week.
to friends for a while. You see, the thing was, before I tell you what it's called, I'll tell you how I got to it.
All right.
Problem was, I like using my iPad for music. Not the most common use I've found from a sort of unofficial survey, but I like it for music, in part probably because I've actually never owned an iPod. It just kind of happened that way. It's not deliberate. I've just always wanted to spend that money on other things.
Sure thing.
So I really like having music on.
You were wrong, but
I prop it up in the kitchen while I cook or whatever. I just find having a bit of music on it really handy. Problem is, Apple's built-in music player is awful. It's beyond awful. There's no option to shuffle. There's no option to create playlists on the fly. All you can do is sync it with your iTunes, if you can sync it with your iTunes. If, like me, and your iTunes is 140 gigs, you can't sync it. So what you have to do is drop albums on manually. So then none of your playlists work. It's just a horrid built-in player. If you are musically inclined, don't use it. It's just abysmal. You can't do half of the things you can do in iTunes, and even iTunes isn't that good, let's be frank. So, what I decided was I needed a better music player. I did some scouting around, and I think the one I found, just generally makes me feel a lot happier, and if nothing else, it looks a lot prettier.
Okay.
It's called Planetary.
Planetary.
In fact, it's busy loading over here. I don't know why it's
As
still
in like
loading.
of a planet.
As in of a planet, yes.
Okay, let me see.
Planetary.
Okay, let's just see if we can. We're going to get fancy now. We're going to go.
You're going to try and find it online and show a shot of it. Well, let me keep talking about it while you do that then, shall I?
A visual music player for iPad by Bloom Studio Incorporated.
Doesn't that just sound beautiful?
Makes you want to just go out and download it like immediately.
I tell you what, you really should.
Okay, so there we go. Oh, that's very pretty.
So what it does, is it shows your music library as if it were a galaxy. And it separates, so you have all your artists or albums or whatever separated by letter. And then if you actually play a track, well, firstly, as you sort of drill down, so you have different galaxies with the different letters. And then if you go to an artist, it will then bring up planets orbiting that artist. And each of those planets represents an album. And if you then click on the planet, each track is a sort of another satellite orbiting the planet, and as they play, it traces a path, and one full path around the album, or sort of the album planet, constitutes the length of the track. And not only is it an incredibly attractive way to play music, but there's just so much more functionality than you get out of the standard, have I mentioned, awful music player that the iPad is supplied with.
Yes,
I just found it really bizarre too. While I'm having my little rant, I'll try and wrap it up here. But that a company that made so much of their modern name on music players could get it so terribly wrong with one of their own products. It just seems bizarre to me that that the functionality can be so bad. I see someone telling me that I should use smart playlists, but I shouldn't have to use smart playlists. What happens if you hear a track while you're out and about and you want to add something to an existing one on the fly? I don't want to have to be reliant on going back to my desktop or my laptop to make it work. Sure, there is more you can get out of the built-in one, but I mean, how, for example, is there no shuffle? It just seems bizarre. I want to be able to make playlists on the fly while I'm away from my computer, and
see, look,
it just drives me mad.
I haven't really used it extensively for music, but I was under the impression that it was pretty much the identical application to what was available on the iPod Touch and the iPhone, which I don't struggle with, incidentally. But I'll take a look at it. I'll take your word. You know what? There's definitely some fantastic novelty value associated with Planetary. I think that's actually a really. I'm all for interesting ways of mashing up and marking up my data and my info.
That's it. It's a new UI. It's a much more interesting way to interact with your sort of music collection.
I can imagine it'd be quite cool from a discovery perspective in terms of there's kind of an influence between
exactly, and
this
it
artist
shows
and that
you those
artist,
sort of links,
and these guys have collaborated together. I mean, you can imagine launching, playing a Pink Floyd track. And what would happen there? There'd be a lot of interesting little offshoots of that, or someone like Santana, because Santana's recently done a ton of collaborations with a whole bunch of people, so that could be interesting too. Either way.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my pick.
I'm glad someone mentioned that the Emperor wears no clothes, because that's what I find with a lot of Mac applications. This is probably the best computer I've ever used in my life, and I've never been so enamored with the computer. Once with the Sony Vaio TX, it came close, but it was so slow that it was a love-hate relationship.
So that's a 13-inch MacBook Air.
It's a 13-inch MacBook Air.
I never thought I'd actually see the day that you switched to a Mac, Mr. Goldstuck. I've always seen you with a PC.
This is why I'm still in shock, you see. It's like it's not quite love at first sight, because it doesn't have the same kind of shock value. But I'm still in shock, and a lot of my friends are still in shock at this. But I have to say, it's not unconditional love. And it's the kind of thing that we're talking about, where it angers me, in fact, how bad the file management is. And people say, well, use Spotlight. I don't want to use Spotlight. I want to be able to manage my files. And especially when I need to upload something, or I want to attach something to an email in Gmail, for example, it is a nightmare to attach something in a complex file system. So it's forcing me to simplify my filing system. But come on, give us a decent document and folder management system on this thing. Okay, that's not my pick of the week, obviously. Although you could say the MacBook Air is.
Is this your pick of the week? The Kodak. I'm desperately trying to get the website up and running, but
my pick
Mr.
of the
Goldstuck is now wearing 3D glasses. In fact, the same 3D glasses that have been part of my Twitter avatar for a while, my Twitter pic. So
these 3D glasses are probably the first
Kodak,
3D glasses ever to come with a printer.
Kodak gets the award for the most unintuitive, ungoogleable website in the history of the world. Do you have any idea how difficult? Let's see if we can go. We can go. It's a 2100, right?
It's the Kodak ESP Office 2100 series.
Let's see if we search their website.
And if they were clever, they would have made the manual in green and red. So the manual would be 3D.
Consumer products and services. Wow, it's an all-in-one, is it?
It's an all-in-one printer. It's a fax machine, a scanner, and a copier.
Let's see if we can get that up. 9.1 all-in-one.
While you're getting it up, I have to say that I had to download the driver, because the drivers came
Got a
on.
2170 here. Is that close enough?
Yeah, that's the one.
Is that the
2170?
Okay, there we go.
So the drivers come on a CD, and of course the modern laptop, certain modern laptops
quaint.
no longer have CD drives. So I had to go online and search for
You
the
mean a
driver
coaster?
and download it. Yeah, a coaster holder.
Yes, jeez.
At least,
Okay.
a coffee cup holder, I mean. So this laptop obviously doesn't come with a coffee cup holder. So you've got to go and find that drive online. It's not too hard to find it once you type in the exact name. But this is the beauty of the device. It also comes with these paper type 3D glasses.
Okay. So the old retro style jobbies.
Totally retro style. And the reason for that is that it allows you to print out 3D photos. But you don't have to take the photos in 3D. That's the amazing thing. You can use any camera, any digital camera,
All right.
any cell phone camera, and you take two photos with a slight variation in your viewing angle. In fact, they give you the instructions. It says all you need is your digital camera. Select a subject that has little motion. Take one picture, and within 20 seconds, move the camera 3 inches. That's 75 millimeters in English, to the right, and take a second picture without changing the angle of the camera. Sorry, I shouldn't have said viewing angle. Simply move the camera 3 inches to the right, and then you save your pictures onto your computer. You use the Home Center software that comes with it to create the 3D picture. You print it out. It's a 3D image, and of course you
What
then view it
resolution? I
with
mean,
these
is
glasses.
it pretty solid? The res, or does it is it kind of gimmicky? Are we talking about it's like moving and powerful, or is it that's nice and then you're going to move on from it?
It's definitely a novelty, but what I like about it and what excites me about it is that it shows us where 3D is going.
Okay.
And it's something I've been watching very closely for the past year or two, because the first 3D TVs that came out were to me very unexciting, and in fact they were little more than gimmicks that gave you a headache and cost a lot of money. In just 18 months they've improved so much, so dramatically in terms of quality and also the experience, that it's starting to become viable. And the cost, of course. The cost has come down dramatically. You can now get for a few thousand rand, as opposed to a few tens of thousands of rands, a high definition LED 3D TV set.
Yes.
But what we're seeing is it's gone beyond the TV. The Nintendo 3DS to me was the next big step in that direction.
I'm a big fan of that. I really love that product.
The 3DS?
It's fun.
It's one of my great devices of the year, because it brought natural 3D to a handheld device for the first time, but in such a compelling way. It showed that you could do so many things with it, and it brought augmented reality into the
AI
picture
app
as well.
For me, blew my mind. That was the most fun
So, I think that's the most exciting
for a
part, because I still feel like, to a large extent, that 3D is only struggling out of the realm of gimmick. I mean, even 3D TVs and so on. I have yet to see a product. I mean, the 3DS was amazing also because it was the first. It was the first one where you could not have glasses, but also it is decently implemented. You know, I've dealt with a couple of phones since that make my brain hurt just looking at it.
Well, that was the next step.
But I still feel it's gimmicky. I still feel like 3D is inherently a gimmick at the moment. It doesn't add functionality. It doesn't make me navigate menus better. You know what I mean?
I can't argue with the fact that it's still gimmicky, but the point I'm making is that we're seeing the signpost to the future of 3D.
Sure.
We're seeing that it's starting to become more natural. It's possible to put it onto any device in a way that doesn't require additional equipment. Requiring this to view 3D is an issue, but the truth is that if you can print out 3D stuff by yourself, and that becomes a standard function on printers, for example, there's no reason it can't become very quickly. Then you're going to start seeing more novel ways of using it, or more interesting ways, and ways that will enhance people's visual experience.
There's no reason that if they can get it to this point in terms of the blue and red kind of stuff, that they can't do something similar but put it through a different set of filters and everything else and put it onto something like a 3DS.
Right.
So that could be quite interesting. You know, of course, you're taking two pictures from slightly different angles, so that's why.
What's missing is a 3D ecosystem.
Sure.
And that's what's got to emerged. But I'm sure we're going to see it in the next year to 18 months.
I'll tell you what I like about 3D and what I don't like about 3D. What I love about 3D is the fact that the best 2D TVs on the market are the 3D TVs. If you want a stunning 2D TV, go out and buy yourself a 3D TV, seriously, because it's very, very demanding in terms of refresh rate and in terms of light source, because of course those shutter glasses shut out a lot of light. They kill a lot of the light because of the flickering and stuff like that. So they've actually got to up it, and I think that boosts the 2D picture dramatically. What I don't like about it is I think that they jumped the gun on 3D. They didn't allow for Blu-ray to really catch hold. Right, Blu-ray also I think was also a little bit of a misfire, because they should have been thinking a little bit more carefully about how we can go into digital distribution mechanisms, because I think that's still a question that a lot of people are asking. Broadband really is there at the moment where you can download Blu-ray quality movies from the internet, and it's not going to break users. No, over ADSL. 6 to 7 meg DSL, it's doable. Considering how much time it takes you to get in your car, drive to the movie rental joint, the little video store, and then find out that the movie you want is out, so you book it and you get it the next day. The internet's far more efficient for that. But I think the net effect of that is that I don't think Blu-ray or 3D are going to be massively successful, because they were launched a little too close to each other. Anyway, but time will tell. We'll see. I don't even think Blu-ray's even caught on today.
I think Blu-ray is dead in the water, because it's a format where, as 3D is a way of viewing something. So 3D's always got a potential future. Blu-ray is probably history already.
So let's quickly jump to my pick of the week and round this sucker out.
But before we do that,
okay, yes.
One last thing about Kodak. I think it's also really interesting that Kodak are doing novel things as a company that is threatening to declare bankruptcy. It's quite fun that they're still releasing fun stuff. But at the end of October, they said that was one of the things they were mulling, because the 131-year-old company hasn't turned a profit in, I forget the exact figure, but it's been a while. So we may not see Kodak anymore, but I find it quite fun that they're still trying to push the envelope and push out interesting products. So kudos to Kodak for that.
Hat tip. All right, so my pick of the week, and there were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to speak about, firstly, the Beats Audio iPod dock, because being massively impressed by their headphones, man, you have to just seriously do yourself a favor, go to a retail store with your iPod, plug it into this thing,
or my iPad,
and crank it up. Yeah, no, it works. Apparently, it works with the iPad as well. I think it does.
They do,
actually, yeah. It's the same dock connector. Mind-blowing sound, absolutely mind-blowing sound. For my money, best iPod dock speakery thing available. It's quite pricey. It's like $4,500, but it is seriously good. But that's not my pick of the week. My pick of the week is a piece of software called OpenELEC. So those of you that know me or follow me on Twitter know that I'm into like home media and displaying really, really high definition video on really, really big screens and flinging content around my home, video, music, all of that kind of stuff. I have this cool digital ecosystem going. But one of the biggest problems is, right, to effectively do that with some level of control in your lounge, you need a little bit more intelligent device. You've got TVs that can stream, but there's always a format problem. And yes, you can transcode and push stuff to your Xbox, but that means you have to have a very powerful machine somewhere else in your home to do the transcoding, etc., etc. So OpenELEC is a packaged version pretty much of XBMC, Xbox Media Center, built on top of Linux. OpenELEC is an acronym for Open Embedded Linux Entertainment Center. Right. Essentially what it is, it's a standalone version of XBMC built on top of a Linux kernel. You download these customized builds off of the internet, and there's a ton of different ones available for different architectures. There are ones, it relies very, very heavily on the graphics card you have. So they're coded for specific brands of graphics card. To give you an example, I've got a 1 gigahertz Atom machine running a decent NVIDIA chipset. It's this tiny, very, very slim little machine, but the key part about this is that it runs an Intel Atom. So it's very, very power efficient, right? This thing transcodes and displays any media of 1080p quality, absolutely no hassle, and will push it onto a 1080p screen without missing a beat, right? Very, very cool stuff. It's not Linux in the sense that you need to know anything about Linux. Essentially what you do is you download the ISO, you burn it onto a memory stick, onto like a little flash stick, you boot from that flash stick and then install it onto another flash stick. That's the other nice part, is it runs off of a little flash stick. So you can have a standalone PC running Windows or something else, but boot it off of this flash stick, which is really, really useful. And yeah, it boots really, really quickly. Fantastic UI, so very consumer electronic centric UI. You can kind of flick through videos and music and stuff like that, customize it really, really easily from just a remote control, and it's free. That's the best part. It's completely free. So check it out, openelec.tv. Completely changed my life. Absolutely awesome piece of software, and yeah, I highly recommend it for anybody that's into home media.
Sounds cool.
So there you go. Another episode of the ZA Tech Show in the bag, episode 185. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Mr. Craig Wilson from techcentral.co.za.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Bretsky Haggard. I've also learned, though, that I must get the guest list from you early so that I know whether I need to bring scotch or not.
Yes, sorry, I was very, very shockingly prepared today.
I was very tempted to bring a good single malt scotch, but I'm still detoxing after last Thursday night at the Whiskey Festival.
Did you go to Whiskey Live?
Did I go to Whiskey Live?
Yes.
Well, he remembers arriving. Anyway, Arthur, you're welcome to bring a bad single malt next time as well. I won't tell anyone.
Okay, for me, the Bunnahabhain was the business. The 25-year-old Bunnahabhain took...
I have to tell you, I tried the 25, the 18, the 15, and the 12, and I actually came away enjoying the 12 the most.
Seriously?
Of all of those, yeah.
The 25 for me, well, okay, out of the 12 and the 18, the 12 was better, but the 25 was just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
You have some supporters in that view. Quite a few guys on Twitter. I went onto Twitter and said, what do you guys recommend? And came back with a lot of recommendations, and I think it was Comrade Sipo who said the Bunnahabhain 21, I think he actually said, or no, 25. No, 25.
There was a 12, 18, and 25.
The 25 he said was just astonishing. But the one that really rocked my taste buds was the Ben Riach 15-year-old Tawny Port.
Oh yes, but that's always been absolutely fantastic. So anyway, so there we go, Mr. Arthur Goldstuck. Thank you for joining me. Not just a bottomless pit of technology knowledge, but also a whiskey aficionado.
At Bretsky, thank you. At
and
Craig Wilson, thank you.
There we go. At Craig Wilson, at Art2G. And at Bretsky, those are our handles. Thanks for joining us. We do this every Monday night. Usually it's Simon Dingle hosting the podcast, at Simon Dingle. But we're just going to speak Twitter for the rest of the evening. But yeah, I'm standing in tonight. And thanks for joining me, gents. We had an absolute blast. And of course, I'm Brett Haggard, at Bretsky on Twitter. Catch us next week. Thanks for listening. Ciao.